Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sociological Lens. I am Dr. Dilsora Fozilova. In today's lecture, we are going to talk about critical theory. First, we are going to make distinction between critical perspective and critical theory. Then we will discuss critical theory in a way we understand the main arguments, main ideas, and main contributions to critical theory. So let's start with a question. How often do we critically question very structures that shape our everyday lives, from the media we consume to the political systems we engage with? Critical theory, born from the Frankfurt School, and you probably know Frankfurt School started as an institute for social research, challenges us to think about how these structures, especially in capitalist societies, aren't just neutral. They are often tools of domination. Thinkers like Adorno and Horkheimer and Marcuse argued that modern capitalist societies aren't just exploit workers in a ways Karl Marx described it. They shape our consciousness, manipulate our desires, and pacify dissent through culture, media, and technology. This perspective asks us to question not just what we think, but why we think it. Are our thoughts genuinely our own, or are they shaped by systems that benefit a selected few? One of the key ideas we will explore today is the concept of cultural industry, which describes how mass-produced culture, movies, music, and social media functions as a means of social control. We will also examine Habermas's idea of public sphere and how often rational debate can be counter to these manipulative forces, provided it remains independent of economic and state power. By the end of this lecture, I hope you will see how critical theory is not just a critic of society, but a call for emancipation, an appeal to challenge the systems that constrain us. So let's dive in and ask ourselves, are we truly free in how we think and how we act and how we live our lives? Or are we shaped by forces we barely recognize? Now I'm going to share my PowerPoint and we will go step by step to discuss these ideas. So here you go. So what is critical theory? As we discussed, that critical theory became a thing because of the Institute for Social Research, which was called Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School's main idea was at the core of the program was to revitalize Marxism through a re-examination of the very foundations of Marxist theory, with a dual purpose of explaining past errors and preparing for future actions. So the main idea was that after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and also that revolutions, what Marx was talking about, did not happen. Therefore, there was a reason for re-evaluating Marxism to find the misinterpretations of the Marxism or historical materialism and interpret them in a way that give the actual original idea of Marxism. So critical theory, therefore, is a scientific paradigm associated with a broad set of ideas as critical perspective. So critical perspective is an umbrella term where critical theory is part of it. Critical theory is one of the core elements of the critical perspective, but sits alongside several other aspects of critical perspective. If you look at this picture, the main ideas in the critical perspective is critical reflection or critical evaluation, critical consciousness, and the critical theory is one of them. Let's take a look quickly what is critical reflection. when we read an article, usually I ask my students to write a critical reflection of that article. What does it mean? So reflect on it. If that idea is presented to you is somehow connects you with what's going on around, the thing is around you, what you really think of that? Is that something you agree with or you disagree with? Is there an experience that can connect you with the ideas in the article? By doing that, we will bring understanding of the arguments. Also, we will have our point of view about the presented ideas or arguments. Critical evaluation is an approach to evaluation that values data transparency and opinions from all stakeholders. Now, for example, if I am evaluating my students' work, what I'm going to do is I will read their writing and think about even their ideas is not the same with mine, or maybe contrary to what I believe. If there is any truth to it, any rationality to it, I try to understand from the different perspective. Think about like, yeah, maybe there's other way of understanding this phenomenon, for example. So that is critical evaluation. Also, critical evaluation can be done the few people evaluating the work. We work. What we do in academia is there is something called peer review, for example. When we submit our articles and manuscripts to publishing companies, so there are few people the publishers have will evaluate the work, and then they will have also external people who will evaluate work. So having so many different people without knowing who you are evaluating your work just provides some critical perspective. So many people's ideas brings like, if people are seeing the value of this paper, are they understanding your arguments, or if people have different opinions about what you're saying. So that is critical evaluation. Critical consciousness is about us, a persistent orientation towards a critically reflective understanding of oneself, others, and the world. And when I think about that, when we get awareness towards something, when somebody teach us about something, when we learn about something, our awareness goes up, and then we start seeing things differently. For example, when it comes to consumerism, or when we talk about nutrition, right? Or when we talk about racism, or when we talk about white fragility, and another very known concept that needs very critical understanding of the concept. This stuff helps us to understand our consciousness, our experiences, and the experiences of others in society. So these ones are not critical theory. This is if we evaluate critically, or if we reflect critically, or if we, kind of raise our critical consciousness, this is not critical theory. So what is critical theory? Critical theory is a set of theories that analyze power relations to make social structures visible and create emancipatory potential in society. So let's take a look to the somehow definition of critical theory. Critical theory is a philosophical approach to understanding society that seeks to critique and challenge power structures and social injustices. As I already mentioned, it originated from the Social Research Institute, which called Frankfurt School later, which was focused on re-evaluating Marx's work in 1930s. As I mentioned, that was developed or formed in 1923. And critical theory combines elements of Marxist thought, which was very critical, psychoanalysis, sociology, political science, and other disciplines to challenge traditional understanding of society, culture, and economics, and also social relations in society. So social science is never politically neutral. Sometimes we create or we argue by our, the research and stuff, and we think we want to claim that social science is objective or neutral. However, our understandings of these structures never can be neutral. That's why critical theory helps us to look at from the different perspectives and critically analyze these issues in society, especially when it comes to power relations, domination, and inequalities. So I will go through now few main ideas of critical theory that will make you understand why do we need critical theory to see certain parts of society. The number one comes to mind is critique of power and domination in society. Critical theory or critical theorists argue that societies are structured in a way perpetuate power imbalances and oppression, often in a form of capitalism, patriarchy, or a racial domination. Now, we study capitalism, and when we study capitalism, we know that capitalism built on a very unequal or oppressive system, which is that bourgeois and proletariat, as Marx argued, that becomes two different social classes, and inequality between them is very highly problematic in society. The bourgeois who owns the means of production, who builds these manufacturing companies, and in today's world, you can think about big corporations, they employ people and buy their time, buy their labor, and get richer and richer and richer all the time. But people who are working for them is selling their labor to afford their families, afford their children, maybe getting a shelter, maybe somehow affording their healthcare bills and so on. So this oppressive systems changed in our time, and there is hidden forms of oppression in capitalist system. Maybe we somehow rationalize the way that capitalists, gain a lot of money. Maybe that's their ideas. Actually, the problem with the oppression in capitalism goes back to the ideas of that bourgeois gets the surplus value from the works of the others, but others will not get paid enough to afford their lives. And in today's world, although changes are there, oppressions still remain hidden in society, and sometimes it's open. When it comes to patriarchy, from the history, we know that different sexes, men and women in society, always have been unequal. So in the beginning, women did not have rights to vote, political rights. They did not have rights to go outside the house and make money, that the economic rights. They didn't have rights for inherency, and they didn't even have rights to have their children in case of divorce. So that was very patriarchal system. And by questioning the systems, why this has to be the way, the men and women are created equal, why they should not have these rights. Critical thinking about the thousands of years of structures, that norms in society, therefore we can change societal norms, right? Or racial domination. At one point in the history, people who were enslaved by white men that were deviant or criminal if they wanted to run away from this system, or they wanted to break the rules because they had to be slaves and serve the white man. So that was a norm in society. Critical theory, therefore, questions that all this remaining is of this racialized systems. Today we don't have slavery. However, the oppression against racialized groups still remain. They are now in a hidden forms. In everyday lives, we make our judgments. We make our judgments based on what is in our consciousness. There are so many great scholars wrote about the racialized body. For example, Dr. Dubois talk about double consciousness. When Black men looks at the mirror, they see themselves as, how they look, and then they look through the eyes of the white man who judges them for being Black, right? And then there is another scholar, I just forgot her name. She talks about white fragility. She says that normal white person has pre-existing judgments towards racialized body. And she says, also argues that we put all our sins to that Black body. There's so many like great arguments, talks about the power and domination, how critical theory helps us to unfold this stuff and then rethink about how society is structured. The goal is to unveil the structures to bring about social transformation. So transformations about, that pre-existing judgments, patriarchal judgments or norms, or racialized judgments or norms, that should transformed in a way that we recognize the equality of all skin colors, which is continuum and beautiful, and we should recognize the equality of men and women, regardless of what roles they have based on their biological makeup. Like women carry their children, that should not be taken like they are less smart, or they are not good enough for certain kinds of works. That is kind of critic of power and domination in our society. And another one is emancipation. When we talk about emancipation, just we need to remind ourselves we are accepting the fact there is still oppression in society. So when we think about, we're still not free from racialized oppressions, we are not free from patriarchal oppressions, we are not free from certain sorts of domination in society, capitalist oppression and other oppressions. So then we can think about emancipation. Unlike traditional theories that merely describe the world, critical theory aims to empower individuals, like the victims of patriarchal systems, who are women usually, or victims of gender roles, or victims of racialized ideas. So critical theory aims to empower individuals to recognize the change oppressive system. The main goal is human liberation from the judgments, liberation from discrimination, liberation from pre-existing norms that oppress these people. And that can be seen in the writings of Karl Marx, for example, when he talks about alienation. You can see that in the works of Max Weber, which talks about rationalization. And all of the stuff, or the understanding of our modern world and what we need to do to emancipate ourselves from these structured inequalities. So that is about emancipation. When we talk about, for example, patriarchy, we are not only talking about, that not equal payments for equal work, not only talking about, for example, women's unpaid work at home. We are talking about violences towards women as well. There are many, many hidden judgments towards a woman's capability of certain things, or ability of certain things. There is one of the writings always gets my attention, is that the Simone de Beauvoir, She talks about, her book is called The Second Sex. And she says that men is a default in society. For example, when it comes to the leadership roles, when it comes to roles that require intelligence, like engineering or spacemanship or astronomy, all those works as men is taken as default. If we talk about female astronaut, we will say female astronaut because the default is men. Male body is the default for doing such work, for leadership, for example. If we talk about the president who's a woman, we say like female president, because in our mind, president should be men. So those are the stuff is already ingrained in our societal blood. So we have to emancipate ourselves from those stuff to have this equal bodies and equal racially and every way equal stuff. And when we talk about equality, however, we need to recognize we're not talking about equality towards like people have to be the same. No, we are not socialists that's thinking like in that way. We recognize everybody is different. But on top of their inequalities, that actual biological inequalities, that individual inequalities, the systems creating unequal set for society, unequal societies. That's what our focus is about. And the critical theory is interdisciplinary. That means that all different disciplines from different perspectives analyze stuff. Critical theory draws from various beliefs like sociology, philosophy, political science, to create holistic view of social issues, often looking at media, culture, law, politics, and other stuff as tools of ideological control. We also talk about interdisciplinary approach being the future of our academia. Why? Because there was so much knowledge, for example, in economy, in philosophy, in sociology, in political science. They weren't connected enough to benefit from one another. Therefore, we had all this knowledge in that area as a result that society could not, benefit from all of them. The ideas created in all of them could become connected and more powerful to help society as well. Therefore, interdisciplinary approach is way better than independently advancing disciplines. When it comes to critical theory, now we can see the different approaches examining the societal inequalities, and these ideas need to come together to understand it better. That is what interdisciplinary approach is. Another one is the self-reflection and consciousness. And we talked about, when we talked about critical perspective, we said that consciousness and self-reflection is part of critical perspective. Now we're talking about in critical theory, we have the part of it that is about self-reflection and consciousness. It emphasizes the importance of self-awareness and consciousness, especially when we read, for example, the Ulrich Beck's The Reflective Society, for example. He talks about how society became reflexive, knowing that there is danger in every area of human life in modern societies. For example, we are aware that, that our climate is changing. We are aware that the structure of families are changing. Families don't have much time for another. We are learning that phones, that being just, like zombies looking at the phones all the time, affecting our relationship with our loved ones. People sit there and sometimes they message one another through their phone instead of going and talking to them. How that is changing our society in general. Individuals should be aware of the social forces shaping their beliefs and behaviors and how they contribute to their own oppression or that of others. And recently we talked in class about the surveillance capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. She just takes us through the systems of surveillance and through social media and internet and other forms of surveillance in our times. And she argues that this surveillance is creating this surplus data that's not about what we're sharing in the social media, but it is about this tremendous amounts of data gathered, which is used for to change our behavior, influence our behavior, or learn about behavior. For example, if we are, she talks about this woman who got to know that she was pregnant through internet. So what happened is she was ordering all of her personal products like a shampoo and conditioner and some other stuff, soaps and whatever, through Amazon. So, and then one day she ordered it enough, certain time, and then she changed the scented products to unscented products. And by doing that, she fit into the category of like, what's her age? Maybe she's 24 years of age. Maybe did she get married recently? Maybe she got married recently within a year or so. Now she's changing her product from scented products to unscented products. So surplus data from millions of women who changed their products from scented to unscented. If there is in this age, age between these ages, and then also if they are married, or sometimes it doesn't have to be married, but it generates this data and decides that this woman is pregnant and starts to send this all products for checking if that woman is pregnant, that indicators or whatever it is, and then start sending baby products, start sending pregnancy clothes advertisings, or there is products for all pregnant women. And she questions, like, why am I getting this? Why am I getting all this advertising for pregnancy and the baby and all of those stuff? So she goes and checks it, and she's pregnant. So what I'm trying to say here is, it's not what you sharing in social media, but what you are sharing with or your behavior, the changing behavior, for example, gives enough evidence to, first of all, prognose what's happening in your life, and then sending you targeted advertising that just makes you do certain things if you're pregnant, for example. So by doing that, all these structures shaping our understanding of the world, shaping our belief systems, influencing us, influencing our behavior by offering all this stuff, right? And by self-reflection and consciousness, we can understand these systems, so we can question them, so we can question if we have enough autonomy or freedom in this world, or every action we have, everything we're thinking, everything we're believing is the product of this powers. So that is one of the things the social critical theory tries to help us to understand. So critical theory has had significant contributions across various fields, particularly in philosophy, sociology, political science. We can keep going on and on, like environmental studies, technology and media, and all of those studies are benefited from critical theory by reflecting to the ideas critically. And now what I want to do is talk about some of the main contributions to critical theory. One of the people who talked about the power and domination in society was Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer. Marx Horkheimer was actually one of the people contributed most to the critical theory, and one of his articles I really like and I read all the time again and again is called Critical Theory. Their work is dialectics of enlightenment. So critical thinking has its own methods, which is dialectical. We will talk about that. They had a writing text called Dialectic of Enlightenment that's published in 1944. That was the critique of Enlightenment's overemphasis on rationality, arguing that it could lead to domination and control. They showed how this rationality, rather than freeing humanity, often leads to few forms of social oppression, particularly under capitalism. So what do we know about Enlightenment? Enlightenment was about boost of all this physics and chemistry and environmentalism, sociology, all of those disciplines got a lot of work in that time. So our understanding shifted from traditional views of the world to enlightened views. A lot of the dark side of our understanding, for example, how we understood natural disasters, how we understood certain things happen to society, was enlightened. So we now don't question what we did. We didn't connect them to natural disasters. People, for example, view that stuff through religion, and they thought that they have done something wrong and gods are punishing them. Now we know why this stuff happens. So Enlightenment, they are arguing that that's great. However, all this arguments and rationality is also leading to a domination and control. They showed how rationality, rather than freeing humanity, often leads to new forms of social oppression. So, for example, in the Industrial Revolution, we talk about rationality of, making the work, the productivity and efficiency became one of the things that we rationalized, and then as a result, we lost human freedom in the process. So their understanding of or their arguments helps us to understand that enlightenment also led to domination and power. The culture industry. So Adorno and Horkheimer also coined the term culture industry to describe how mass-produced culture, such as TV, film, and music, serves as a service to pacify and manipulate the masses. Now, in today's world, we talk about social media, and there is a domination in society. There's a mass media theories. If you like to take a look, one of them is about domination, and it says some dominant groups put out what they want you to know, or the media's role became not helping you how to think, but giving you what to think about. So by giving you what to think about, they kind of manipulate your understanding of the world. Also, whose voice is heard and whose voice is not heard is basically on the hands of few. Those create all these media products. However, though, the social media, introduction of social media challenged that idea. Now, the producers of social media is not only these few or several big corporations and stuff, but now people can react to it. People can like or dislike. They can also create content. However, in our times, also there is a creation of dominant ideas. For example, representation of women in social media or media as thin, beautiful, looking in certain way, talking in certain way, or all of those ideas about woman's body or woman creates this oppressive systems, as everybody else in the system tries to be that way, that whatever the way it is represented or presented in media. Therefore, they're never happy about their body image. They're never happy about how they look. And that the image created in media is far from natural, how woman natural is. That's too ideal. So there is a disconnection between how we are in naturally woman and the image created in media, for example. Also, that films, what kind of ideas they try to spread. There was a conversation about Disney portraying all women as beautiful, and they are, and sometimes they're oppressed and they need a prince to come and save them. So always there was a white woman who's born in a family of nice parents, and one of the parents dies, for example, in Cinderella, and then they became oppressed by their stepmother, or that was the same thing in the Snow White. It was the same thing in other ones. There was never racialized groups represented in that kind of media. And then always there is somebody needs to come and save them. Prince needs to come and that help Cinderella or save Cinderella or Snow White or other ones that not coming to my mind. And after this critical conversation is about this pre-existing judgments, even in the kids' movies, and then they start to produce different ones like a Pocahontas that now they're presenting or presenting women as strong, and there was other ones like Moana, for example. Moana saves her the people, and they are people of color, for example. And that same thing happening in the other movie industries, not only Disney, right? There is change because of this critical questioning of the pre-existing structures in TV, film, and music. However, we just keep getting the new forms of oppression through media and social media, and requires always critical thought of just seeing through or looking through this stuff. They looked at the media industry as a tool for reinforcing capitalist ideologies, distracting individuals from their exploitation and suppressing critical thinking. That was Adorno and Horkheimer's argument. So reification and alienation, as you know, that alienation was one of the very famous concepts of Karl Marx. Herbert Marcuse extended that ideas of Karl Marx as concept of reification, which is turning people and social relations into objects, and alienation under capitalism. So to remind ourselves, Marx writes about alienation as part of capitalist system. So in the traditional families, people are connected with their families, with people around them. They produce stuff, products from their home. For example, shoemaker produces shoe and teaches his or her children to become a shoemaker. That's kind of like a chain of education. They can have lunch together, they can work together in their own environment. They can choose their raw materials, rubber or leather or whatever the way it is, and then they're connected with the consumer, the whoever orders that boots. They're connected with that person. They know what they like, what they dislike. And then there is an element of being creative because they can always improve their work and design differently. They can learn from their own mistakes and do stuff differently. And over time, they they produce better and better and better products. So Marx's idea was, after the industrialization, people start to move towards different systems of work, right? Labor was changed. Now people were going to work in the manufacturing companies. They're away from their home from, let's say, 8 to, at that time people worked long hours, maybe until late 10 o'clock at night. They were away from their home, away from their environment. And now what they can do is do one thing. If they are tightening one part of the car, for example, they tighten one thing. They are separated from other people who are doing other parts of that car. Now they are separated from their families, separated from people who are working with. Now they are separated from the outcome of their work. That product they made is not only theirs, that thousands of people together made this one car. Nobody can really say this is my car. We are alienated from many things, alienated from society, alienated from our work, alienated from the part of our creativity. So we cannot change that anything because just we are doing one thing. That work does not even require skills from you. Therefore, there was alienation between people's identity, who they are, and that work they are doing. That created a lot of dissatisfaction at work, and sometimes that led to depressions and committing suicide because people were alienated from everything. That was very depressing for them. And Marcuse continued this idea, alienation, and also the concept of reification. So in One-Dimensional Men, she talks about people becoming one-dimensional because they are influenced, every step of their lives are influenced by technologies and media. We are losing our critical thinking skills because everything is out there, made it ready for us to choose from. For example, if you are getting married, the idea is already out there. Like there's only few ideas that for the clothes you choose, you have to choose white dress for women, and men can choose tuxedo, or there is like few other options they can choose from. And then our society and everybody else tells us the next step is having child, for example. And when we decide to have a child, there is all these kinds of products and services that offered for us to do certain ways, color coding their rooms and all of those stuff. And then when it comes to work, again, Marcuse argues that if we talk about work, let's say 3 people work in one place. One of them is a worker, another one is a manager, another one is owner of that company. They all work very hard to get their next thing. If the next thing is a car, the worker tries to get maybe like $20,000 car, and they save up for that, work very hard for that to get that $20,000 car. And the manager already have $20,000 car. The next thing for that person maybe is getting that $70,000 car, which is for rich, and then he needs to work very hard to get there. And the owner perhaps wants, $500,000 car. And this is just what I'm creating to think about how this works. So main idea is nothing changes. All of them are vehicles, but all these 3 people work day and night to achieve that. And society requires people to do such kind of stuff because of this reification, because of this, how society sets platform for us to how to act. Everything we do is kind of, told us. And if we think about, for example, if we think about one-dimensional dog or cat, for example, we can understand one-dimensional men better. If you think about your cat, we create a specific environment for our cat. We buy cat food, we get a scratching post for them. We get all these toys and stuff to make the cat entertained, and we do everything so they remain inside the house. Cats are basically like a indoor, can be indoor animals. However, we make them in a way that they are so domesticated. They love their environment. In case if they left outside, they cannot survive, because in the wild they are different. They are hunters. They are, they are on the trees. They do different things. Their nails will get very strong. By cutting their nails and doing everything we think that's good for a cat, just makes them very vulnerable, makes them very depending on us. And the idea the Marcuse have is all these technologies and everything makes us vulnerable, makes us weak as human beings. We are disconnected from who we are naturally. Our instincts, our everything we have is disappearing. Even our memories are disappearing. That, I agree, because before I could remember so many phone numbers, that from my head, like I memorized them because I called family and stuff. And now I don't even know my own phone number sometimes. Why? We just click it, and then only when they ask our phone number, that's when maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. I know my phone number, but you got it. So you don't remember the phone numbers of the closest people you have in your lives. So Marcuse argued that technological rationality in advanced industrial societies creates conformism and stifles radical thought, leading to alienation of individuals from authentic freedom and critical reasoning. So he doesn't give us what should we do. However, he thinks that we need to leave this way of living, and we need to start thinking critically and engage with critical thought that makes it not one-dimensional, but multidimensional human beings. So that is another part of critical theory. And emancipatory, I just have problem saying this word. Emancipation is the word I use usually. Emancipatory knowledge and communication. So sorry if I'm saying it wrong. So Habermas contributed a major theoretical framework regarding communication and democracy. His theory of communicative action that was published in 1981 emphasizes how rational discourse and free communication in the public sphere can lead to societal emancipation. Unlike his predecessors, Habermas was more optimistic about the possibilities of democracy and reason as tool for progress. So that just kind of makes me think about Plato, that he says that if you want to know what is justice, you have to have this dialectic conversation about the two parts needs to have a dialectic conversation. And the Habermas's work is way higher than, that more deepened and connected with our world, but the main idea is still the same. For example, if we listen to many people about one ideas, let's get their perspective and analyze through their perspective and keep doing that in a critical way, the way of understanding, the society becomes more clearer. For example, we understand society from our point of view. Do we understand discrimination or inequalities through the eyes of rationalized people? Do we understand it through the eyes of women? Do we understand it through the eyes of different nationalities, other people? Where are these different perspectives that comes into play in the public sphere when we talk about them, we discuss them, and we kind of emancipate ourselves from being caught up with the system, like we said in our previous previous part, that being alienated or being told us what to do, how live our lives. While not part of the original Frankfurt School, critical race theory, which we call always CRT, influenced by critical theorists, focuses on intersections of race and power. And we can mention so many different scholars. However, the Kimberly Crenshaw created the intersectionality theory of the concept of intersectionality, Denmark Bell, and others. There is Dr. Dubois. I call him doctor because he liked to be called that way. So that I read that. And then since then, whenever I'm talking in my class, I just keep saying Dr. Dubois. Dubois was about double consciousness. He talks about how people of color see themselves through their own eyes and see how they look. And, when they look at the mirror, then they look at themselves through the eyes of the oppressor or white people, and then see themselves like as racialized. That is, all this definition is given to, colored or skin colors. For example, when the race came out during the colonialism, the definition or description is given to that, that colored body was they are lazy, aggressive, ignorant, and all of the barbarian, all of those stuff. The elements of that still exist in the eyes of that oppressor. When they look at themselves through the eyes of the oppressor, that's what they see. Therefore, makes them feel still oppressed in society, inconfident of our skill, their own skills and contributions to society. There are so much conversation can be done about critical race theory, but I am just mentioning it as part of understanding critical theory. However, I think understanding what Kimberly Crenshaw did was also important, that according to Crenshaw, that there are different kinds of different parts of our identity makes our experiences different. For example, poor Black person with no education is different than a wealthy Black person with education. How they live their lives are different. Opportunities are different. There is different sorts of parts of our identity can intersect and make our experiences different. We cannot compare the people of color, for example, educated people of color to not educated people of color. We cannot generalize their experiences. We cannot generalize experiences of women and men if they are people of color, or we cannot generalize their experiences if they are economically different level, right? So Crenshaw brings that into picture and showing us to understand human experience in our societies. So that is part of critical race theory. And actually, I had a intersectionality slide, and I forgot about that. Kimberly Crenshaw also introduced the concept of intersectionality, extending critical theory's ideas by showing how individuals express or experience oppression in various intersecting ways based on race, gender, class, and other factors. I think my writing is better than how I explained. This has influenced feminist theory and expanded the scope of critical theory to include more diverse perspectives. Marcuse is another person who wrote about technology and capitalism. We can think about Shoshana Zuboff and many, many others who critically analyzing technology and media in our times. However, some of the writers that the first contributors to technology and capitalism was Marcuse, Andre Gors. They critiqued the role of technology in capitalist societies, noting that technological advancements often serve the interests of capital and social control rather than liberating individuals. If you're interested with this area, I would really highly recommend to read Shoshana Zuboff's Surveillance Capitalism that tells us about today's data surplus or data gathering through all these internet technologies and how that is helping certain groups to manipulate and dominate mainstream society. Modern democracy in public sphere, and we talked about Habermas's public sphere thing and how dialectics is important to critically analyze our lives, freeing people from economic and state power where citizens can engage in a rational critical discussion, which is very crucial for the functioning of democratic societies. Democracy is fragile when we don't take that seriously and we keep contributing to it, having these discussions about critical thinking. Democracy can fail very easily. Therefore, the Habermas's work on the public sphere becomes very important, which is part of critical theory. Also, this is also a big deal in our time, the critique of consumerism. Marcuse's one-dimensional man is also about consumerism. We can talk about Ulrich Beck's critical environmental analysis, also talks about consumerism. Adorno criticized the ways in which consumer culture creates passive, complacent individuals, diverting from the political activism or pursuit of authentic emancipatory goals. They viewed consumerism as a form of social control that maintains the status quo. Basically, people are directed towards consuming goods and services, and they are busy doing that, which is taking them away from activism, critical thought, and everything. And we can observe that in many parts of the world, and everywhere probably. People are interested with getting their next thing, next toy. And to do that, they just don't want to think about what's going on in our society. They don't want to use their critical thinking and just going towards consuming products just to make more money. And people are just made very busy by this stuff, and therefore there is a critique of consumerism in critical thought. Feminist and post-colonial applications of critical theory has also been extended by feminist and post-colonial theorists. There are so many of them. To name a couple of them, Nancy Fraser can be one of the main contributors, and Gayatri Spivak, who applied insights to analyze patriarchy and the lingering effects of colonialism. And we often see colonialism as still continuing in a different forms today, and that is the result of critical thinking. This broadened the scope of critical theory to include a wider range of social justice in societies. And today is globalization and how labor are treated. People are moving, the big companies moving from the developed countries towards that underdeveloped countries to take advantage of raw materials, for example, labor and markets can be seen as a continuation of colonialism. And that's the post-colonial critique of our time, right? In summary, in today's class, we tried to understand what critical theory is, what it is and what it isn't. We talked about critical perspective, which is many different things, our critical reflection to our lives, our awareness, our, for example, evaluation of stuff critically. That is part of critical perspective. Critical theory is part of it, which is scholarly, which is like includes many different frameworks to understand societal inequalities, which include that critical race theory, it includes environmental studies, it includes technology and media, and different parts of critical theory. Critical theory is an umbrella term that holds many different theories, and it isn't just about understanding the world, but transforming it by exposing and challenging power relations in various forms. So I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and I will see you in our next one. Have a great day.